If you're moving to St. Louis from another city, another state, halfway across the country or the world, in this video, we're talking about some tips and tricks to save time, money, and make it just as easy as possible to move to St. Louis. So let's get into it. So we all know moving can be a stressful process. Whether you've done this 3 times or 30 times, it's a lot to handle. So we're gonna talk about some tips and tricks with moving. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for how to go about moving, what stays, what goes, how you should go about, moving your whole life from one place to another. But I'm gonna talk about, some things in my experience and what my clients have done that really seems to be helpful when moving to St. Louis, especially if you're coming from out of state or from somewhere, where you're not just down the street when moving to St. Louis. And real quick, if there's anything I talk about in this video where you have questions, comments, concerns, you wanna get in touch, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, whatever works for you. You can get a hold of me right there when you're moving to St. Louis. If you need help with the process, that is what I'm here for. So one of the first things on the list that is very important to think about when moving to St. Louis is your furniture. Are you gonna keep it? Are you gonna sell it? Are you gonna buy new stuff when you move to St. Louis? What's your plan with your furniture? Think about what you're gonna, give up in a yard sale or give to friends and family, and what you're gonna bring with you to St. Louis. And importantly, you gotta think about, is this gonna fit inside the door of the new house? Is it gonna fit in your new living room, your new bedroom, your new kitchen, whatever it is? You gotta make sure that, your measurements and everything line up, and you gotta make sure that the style fits the new house, right? You wanna make sure that what you have in your current home, matches with your home you're gonna be living in here in St. Louis. If you're bringing stuff with you, if you're starting over from scratch, that is totally fine. I mean, it makes it a lot easier, but it will be expensive, buying a bunch of new furniture if you're starting from scratch here in St. Louis. So if you're keeping everything, sure, you save money because you don't have to buy a whole new set of furniture, but you got to think about how you're going to actually get it here to St. Louis. Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to hire a company? If you do it yourself, it's going to be cheaper, but then it's going to be super frustrating if you got to do it yourself, moving it in and out of the house. I mean, are you going to be walking up a set of stairs and then drop the coffee table and it goes everywhere? That's something I would do. You got to think about how much are you bringing, how much are you giving away before you move to St. Louis. And if you're downsizing, you got to think about what stays and what you're not even going to have room for in the new house. If you're upsizing, you're going to have to buy new furniture regardless, because you're probably not going to have enough where you live right now. So the first thing is furniture. The second thing is boxes. If you haven't looked into this yet, you will soon realize it can be expensive to buy a bunch of shipping boxes. Don't go to your Lowe's or your Home Depot. Sure, if you have to, definitely go do that. But my advice is check on Facebook, check on Craigslist, check on the Nextdoor app, send a message to your friends or family, whatever you can do. See if you have someone in the area who has recently moved, or maybe they just have a bunch of boxes in their house that they can give to you for free, or at least at a pretty good deal for you to get those boxes without having to pay full price at, your Lowe's or your Home Depot, because it's gonna be expensive. If you're buying 20, 30, 40 boxes to move your whole house, that gets very expensive. So, get creative with it. See if there's something on Facebook Marketplace, or if you have a relative, your cousins, your aunt, your uncle, whatever, who just has some boxes that they can give you, or, someone down the street in your neighborhood, see if you can get a couple boxes here or there and it'll add up. But boxes can be very expensive. So think about that and see if you can save money getting the boxes from someone else. And that goes for other packing supplies too, like packing tape, bubble wrap, packing peanuts, and plastic wrap. And if you can't find anyone who's giving stuff away on Facebook or Craigslist or the Nextdoor app, just make a post and be like, hey, we're moving, we got a bunch of stuff. Does anyone in the area have some boxes that they could drop off, or maybe I could go pick them up? We just have a lot of stuff, and we need some boxes. You gotta have boxes to move. So just get creative with it. You'd probably be surprised by how many people, just have boxes laying around that they can give to you to make the moving process a lot easier. Now, next up is appliances, and this can kind of go both ways because there is no set standard for which appliances stay with the house and which appliances go, at least not here in St. Louis in Missouri. So we kind of negotiate that with the sellers, like, hey, we want this, this, and this, but you can take this with you, we have our own. So typically what a lot of people ask for when buying a house here in St. Louis is they want the refrigerator, microwave, oven, dishwasher, all of those kitchen appliances, it's pretty standard to ask for those when buying a house, unless for some reason a seller will say that those are excluded. Sometimes the sellers will have like a super high-tech fridge or something like that that's expensive and they want to take it with them. That's fine, I see that sometimes. And then sometimes if the buyers don't want those, they'll say, you know, hey, take your dishwasher, take your fridge, whatever. I don't want it, I have my own. And then washer and dryer can kind of go both ways. Sometimes the seller wants to leave them there because they're a pain in the ass to move. Sometimes the seller really wants to take them with them. And then sometimes the buyer wants to keep them, and sometimes the buyer would rather bring their own. Just make sure if you're getting a new dryer, make sure that it is either a gas or electric, whichever one works for the house that you're getting, because you can't really switch out an electric hookup for a gas line. That's kind of tough to do. So just make sure whatever the house already has, that if you're bringing your own, it matches, or if you're buying one, you buy the appropriate one. You don't want to buy a gas dryer if the house is electric, and vice versa. I mean, I guess if you wanted to switch out electric for gas or vice versa, you could. It's just not as common, and it's kind of a pain to do that. So just make sure you buy the appropriate dryer if you're buying a new one. Next up, you want to think about, are you going to hire a moving company or are you going to do everything yourself? Obviously, hiring a moving company is going to be the most expensive option, but in my opinion, that's going to be the easiest, just because you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to worry about bringing furniture with you and that kind of stuff. The movers will do it all. They will, you know, pack it up, they'll wrap it all in bubble wrap and, you know, get it into the truck, load it up, and then take it to your new house, and they'll handle the disassembly and reassembly, all that kind of stuff that you don't want to deal with because it's a headache, it's a nightmare to deal with. So if you want to outsource it to a moving company, you can definitely do that, depending on how much furniture you're bringing. You know, it might be more expensive if you're moving a whole house versus, you know, doing a couple rooms, not having that much furniture might be less expensive. So just think about that. And then if you're going to do it yourself, you know, are you going to rent a truck? Are you going to get a U-Haul, put it in the back of your car, whatever? One of my clients actually just told me they got a U-Haul, and right now if you get a U-Haul and rent a U-Haul, they'll give you a month of free storage. So that's awesome. That's great to have if you want some extra storage space while you're getting the house ready, or you have a gap between closing on your house and buying the next one. Having that month of free storage can be great if you do a U-Haul. It's obviously going to be cheaper than hiring a moving company, but if you're someone who likes to do it yourself, or you're fine with, you know, getting the family together to move the beds and the dressers and all that kind of stuff into the U-Haul and then unloading it at the new house, you can definitely do that. Honestly, I've done it both ways. I kind of prefer the moving company just because every time we try to do it ourselves with a U-Haul or just putting it in the back of the car, it always ends up in us just screaming at each other like, no, you gotta carry it here. Yeah, I'm dropping it, you gotta pick it up. And then we end up with furniture that's scratched, the floors are scratched, the walls are all banged up. It's just an absolute headache. So just something to think about. Are you gonna hire a moving company or do it all yourself? Up to you, depending on what you want to do and how you want to move and how much stuff you're bringing with you. Totally up to you. Now, the next thing you want to think about is, what do you do if your house isn't ready yet? What if there's a gap between closing on your previous house and buying the next house? If you're left with a couple days or a couple weeks of time in between, you gotta have somewhere to stay, obviously. Now, the easiest option is always to close on the next house before you close on your old house, but that doesn't always work out just because of the financing required to do so, and sometimes just with the sellers and the buyers' timelines, you can't always line it up perfectly. So what do you do if you have a couple days or a couple weeks in between closing on your previous house and closing on the next house? If it's only gonna be a couple of days, you can probably check into a hotel, just because if you're only gonna be there for 3 or 4 days, that's not that big of a deal. But if you're gonna be, you know, 2 or 3 weeks without a house, then a hotel might not be the best choice. It can also be pretty expensive. So if you're gonna be a couple of weeks without a house, I would recommend looking into an Airbnb or a Vrbo, just because you get better rates on a per night basis than having to book a hotel stay. And if you're booking a longer stay at an Airbnb, like 3, 4, 5+ weeks, whatever it is, ask and see if the owner can give you a better deal just because you're booking a longer stay with them. Just ask and see and explain your situation and say you don't have a house to move into quite yet, and see if they can give you just a better discount because you're booking such a long stay with them. If you have friends or family who live in the area that you can stay with and you're willing to stay with, that can be a great option too. If you can live there for free for, you know, a couple of days to a couple of weeks while you're waiting for your house to be ready, that can be a great option too, and save you a lot more money than staying in a hotel or an Airbnb. Another thing is that if you're coming here for a job, relocating because your company requires you to, sometimes Sometimes employers will pay for the full cost of a hotel stay or an Airbnb, or at least they'll reimburse you for some of it just to lessen that burden of, paying for an Airbnb stay or a hotel. So if you're relocating for a job, ask your employer, see if they have any program like that, or they're willing to pay you back for what it costs to get a hotel or an Airbnb while you're waiting for your house here. And then finally, if you're gonna be here for a longer term period, waiting for your house to be ready, like a couple months to 6 months being here, waiting for your house, you might want to look into a short-term rental or lease, but the thing is, those can be difficult to find because a lot of places will want to see a 12-month lease minimum if you're looking at leasing a house or an apartment as a short-term housing option. So sometimes if they don't require a 12-month minimum, I've seen that sometimes they'll hike up the prices for rent by as much as 25% sometimes if you're gonna do a 3-month or a 4-month lease because they want something more long-term. So if you're gonna be here for a couple months and trying to find a lease option, it's doable, it's just tough to find because a lot of landlords and leasing companies will want to see 12-month minimum if you're leasing a place here. Now, the next thing you want to get taken care of before you move to St. Louis is daycare. You want to get this settled before you come to St. Louis because spots can fill up very quickly, availability can be limited, especially now with COVID, and you just want to get it settled before you come to St. Louis. Now, I don't have kids, so I don't speak from personal experience, but from what my friends and colleagues and previous clients say, this is a big deal, especially when you're moving and dealing with the headache of moving your life from another place to St. Louis. Get daycare out of the way, get it settled, get it taken care of so that you know your kids have a spot in daycare before you come to St. Louis. Especially if you're gonna be working from home and you don't wanna deal with having the kids around all day long. Get daycare settled before you come to St. Louis so you know that that's taken care of and it's out of the way and it's not something to worry about. So just make sure you get daycare settled before you come here and make sure you also plan for the cost. It can be expensive, so if your kids aren't in daycare where you live now, make sure you plan ahead for the extra cost of sending your kids to daycare because it can be pretty pricey to have your kids in daycare. Two options a lot of people really seem to prefer here are Primrose and Little Sunshines. These are two different daycares. They have several locations throughout St. Louis County and St. Charles County. I think there's like 4 or 5 locations for each one of them. So Primrose and Little Sunshines are two very popular choices. I have 2 of my good friends at work who both send their kids to Primrose. They love it. They said Little Sunshines is just as good of an option. Those are 2 top choices for preschool and daycare here in the St. Louis area. So I mean, basically just from what they say and what previous clients have said to me, Primrose and Little Sunshine seem to be 2 of the best choices when moving to St. Louis. I don't really know how they compare as far as price and how easy it is, to set up stuff with daycare. I just know that that's very important to get taken care of before you come to St. Louis. So just think about it, just, plan ahead for that, get that ball rolling before you come to St. Louis so that you have daycare pretty much lined up for when you get here. And then honestly, guys, the last step is if you have questions, you're moving to St. Louis, you want some help with the process, get in touch with me. I mean, relocation is what I specialize in. I work with buyers and sellers all the time who are moving to and from St. Louis. Give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. My contact info is right there. I respond pretty quickly. So that's the best way to get in touch with me if you have questions or you're relocating to St. Louis and you want some help with the process. So I hope this video was helpful and informative. I will see you in the next video. Take care.